Hi booktube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to go through some of my favourite books from 2023. There's still a little bit of December yet, but I'm fairly certain that although I'm likely to enjoy many of the books that the year has left for me, they probably won't be taking the top spot. So I've got my top 5 books I read for the first time, and then I've got a top 6 of my favourite rereads, just because I found it, uh, I don't know, I found it hard to whittle down the list of favourite rereads. So I'll start with the books that I read for the first time. They're in no particular order, although I think the last book, the tops, will actually be the top spot. But starting things off, we've got Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust. I didn't read all of this in 2023. I read this book here that has the first 2 parts, the first 2 volumes, last year in 2022, and then I read these 2 sections, or the last 4 parts, or 5 parts even, this year. And I think particularly this year, from January through to I think August when I finished it, that was definitely when I felt that I was, I don't know, kind of living with this author in a way, when I was reading him and kind of living in the world that he was creating. And so yeah, it was definitely one of the highlights of the year, and a sort of an experience that kind of sums up my year of reading. Um, and it's been quite odd since finishing Proust, because for well over a year it was always in the background. So if I didn't know what else to read, I could always pick up Proust and just sort of sink in. And that was quite reassuring after a while. And then once I finished it, that was gone, and suddenly there's this weird space in my reading where, you know, I'm not quite sure what to fill it with. So that was really interesting, and yeah, just a great experience. Next up, a little different. We've got part 1 of the complete Mumin comic strips by Tove Jansson. And this is just one of these things that I read just at the right time. This year, I was definitely feeling like I needed a little more variety in my reading, and I couldn't just be reading these big sort of heavy books all the time. And so I read this, and I just loved the sense of humour and the kind of charm of it and the artwork. And so yeah, I'll be trying to pick up more of these, but this was sort of just delightful, and it just um, gave my reading a bit of a boost, um, when I felt like, you know, if I was going to pick up another Dostoevsky or something, then I'd probably just put it down again. So it was sort of just the right time to pick it up. Next up, we've got Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I just recently finished this, and in my last sort of reading update video, went through some of the reasons why I really loved it. Another thing that quite a few other people, I think in the Classics and Company group, brought up was the fact that Tolstoy doesn't judge his characters, he just presents them, which again makes them feel more real, and you're just meeting them as they are. And, you know, if, if you want to, you can judge them, but Tolstoy is, you know, doing the best he can just to present them to you, which is just wonderful. So yeah, a really, really great book. I haven't really digested it yet. I think it will be one I'll be coming back to again and again. Then next up, we've got A History of Reading by Alberto Manuel. And this is what it says on the tin. It certainly is a history of reading, and not a definitive history of reading. But it's, very, very broad, sort of going through. So here we have picture reading, so sort of the role of illustration in books. There's the Book of Memory, it's just really really cool, and it's one of those things where it just makes you feel really special to be a reader, um, and actually kind of brings it home just how weird this thing that you're doing as you're reading this book is. Um, so yeah, just a magical book, and I need to get more books about books, because whenever I read one, I just absolutely love it. So it's something I need to look into. And then my last one, and really the number one spot for books that I read for the first time this year, is A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Fermer, um, which is just it's just a wonderful sort of true story, kind of travelogue of a young man walking across Europe, about what is it, 6 years before the outbreak of the Second World War, and it's just wonderful. His writing style is really warm and vivid, um, and it's just a wonderful story. He's meeting interesting people, and he's getting into all kinds of antics. Um, but yeah, ultimately, it's just a great journey and a great person to spend that journey with. And I've been reading the two following books, Between the Woods and the Water, and I'm currently reading The Broken Road, which is the last book in this journey that he takes on foot from Holland to Constantinople, with a few detours. And then I've got 6 books that I reread. So these are my 6 favourite rereads. Uh, they were meant to be 5, and then I looked at the pile and realised that there were 6, um, which I think just goes to show that maybe one of the most valuable things I've found in my reading year has been rereading. So first up, I think one of the first books I reread this year was The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, and I read this as a buddy read with Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics, and Flossie from the Grape Jelly Library, and that was great because it was a first time read for the two of them, and so I kind of got to relive the experience of reading it for the first time through what they had to say, and um, and then I was sort of piecing this picture that I could kind of remember but couldn't totally remember all back together. So yeah, just a great book, and I was really impressed by her writing style and the way that it does feel um, uh, kind of Victorian in the way it's written. And there are, I think there are homages to Conrad and to I think to Melville as well, just kind of thrown in there. Not terribly obvious, but I think she just kind of sprinkles them in from time to time. I'm trying to work out where to put the books. I'll put them there. Then next up, another one that I've just recently read or reread. That's the Bel Jar by Sylvia Plath. I was reading it this month for Remember December, so an event that I've been co-hosting, all about rereading, which has been really lovely. And this was a great reread. Like a couple of other people who have reread the Bell Jar this month, um, I saw that there was much more a sense of humour in there, and so quite a few other people have noted on that it is really quite a funny book, as well as quite a brutal and at times quite dark book. But also there's a silver line of hope running through the book as well. And so yeah, there's much more going on in it than I picked up the first time round, which was really interesting. Um, the second time round, I did also notice a lot of that kind of um, I don't know, a kind of language that I associate with sort of high school films, or like there's some conversations between characters where it does kind of sound like some of the dialogue between the teenagers in Twin Peaks, which maybe just kind of goes to show that it's, I don't know, maybe both are quite um, accurate portrayals of American adolescence. I don't know. Then next up, another reread for Remember December. That's Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot. And I think sort of within this world of rereading this year, rereading poetry has been one of my favourite things as well. And just sort of rediscovering these little worlds. Yeah, it's been really, really wonderful. And I read this really slowly and very deliberately, whereas the first time round a few years ago, I just sort of sped through it. So I really appreciated this, and yeah, just something hauntingly beautiful to these poems. And I think it also sort of ties in with, I think, a lot of the books that I've been enjoying, kind of all about memory and sort of wrestling with your past and things like that. So yeah, it was interesting to see that in T.S. Eliot. Next up, we've got Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I think I say this every time I pick up a Bronte book, where it just kind of feel like just going home when I read a Bronte book. You know, when it comes to reading a novel, it's about as sort of comfortable and just kind of homely as it gets for me, even though they're not terribly happy stories, particularly this. You know, it's pretty violent. I also read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte this year. And actually I finished Villette at the very beginning of the year. So I've read all three Bronte sisters in 1 year, but I think this will be my favourite. Then nearing the end, and I think these two, if I was to include my rereads into my top, my favourite books of the year, these would make the top 5, probably would make up the top 3, along with A Time of Gifts. We've got The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, which again was just a wonderful world to fall into. A similar experience to reading Proust in a way. It's a very, very slow book, but the characters are wonderful. Not nearly as realistic as like Tolstoy's characters, but I don't think they're really supposed to be. But it's a really, really wonderful book. So yeah, I think there was a reading update when I sort of just finished this, and I went through what I thought of it. But yeah, this is probably one of my favourites, of all-time favourite books. I can say that a little more decisively now that I've read it a couple of times. And then this book has probably been my favourite reading experience this year, and that's the Duino Elegies by Rilke. This is translated by Vita Sackville-West and Edward Sackville-West, and I read this in the Edward Snow translation a few years ago, and part of what I loved about rereading this was going back to the Snow translation and reading each section of, or sort of each elegy multiple times and comparing the translations. And I think that just really brought what he was saying to life. It made them feel a bit more vivid for me. Just spending that much more time with them, kind of like when I was reading Four Quartets, just reading these poems a little more slowly and more sort of deliberately as well. It was just really, really great. These are really sort of sad, melancholic poems about sort of dealing with the sort of weight of existence and mortality. But they're really beautiful and again quite hopeful as well. This is something I'm sure I'll be rereading quite a lot. I think next year I want to read some more Rilke. And that's it. So that's my top 5 sort of new books and my top 6 rereads. I'll probably do a sort of wrap up of the year at some point. I'll wait until I've sort of finished my reading for the year once we're sort of in the beginning of 2024. And at some point as well, I'll make a video about some of my plans for 2024 as well. So I think that's everything I wanted to say. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've had a great reading year, and I hope that you've got a good stack of books that you can look to and feel like they were really worth reading. So for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.